Everybody wants that crystal ball. They want someone who will tell them, this is the LSAT practice question to study. These are the sections that you should focus on. This is what's coming on your test. And for years, there were some people who claimed to have that LSAT crystal ball. Not perfect predictions, of course, but enough they could reasonably feel confident in their recommendations. But today in 2026, that LSAT crystal ball is gone. It is shattered because LSAC changed the conditions that ever made prediction possible in the first place. The first big factor in removing the ability to predict the LSAT is the fact that full LSAT practice tests were leaked internationally through organized cheating operations. And so for LSAC, predictable reuse of those exams became a security risk. And so LSAC responded to the cheaters by reducing the reuse visibility and increasing randomness in their administrations. And once they introduce randomness, that breaks the ability for anybody to forecast or predict what's going to be on the LSAT, which means that any crystal ball predictions or forecasts are now structurally impossible. Let me say this carefully and plainly. LSAC is aware that full LSAT's entire exams, not just individual questions, have been leaked because the LSAT was hacked. And these were complete LSAT test forms circulating as paid products by organized cheating networks in China. And because that happened, LSAC had to stop reusing those test forms in full because, of course, if a leaked exam is reused in any predictable way, the problem isn't just that some people have an advantage, it's that every honest score becomes suspect. It problematizes the integrity of the exam. And LSAC, of course, is entrusted to protect the credibility of law school admissions. And so they don't really care whether LSAT crystal ball prediction webinars are convenient. They want to eliminate the conditions that made prediction possible. And so for that reason, the crystal ball has had to die. It is irrelevant now going forward. Now, most students think that LSAC has made the exam harder, and they have, but they also, more importantly, changed how the LSAT is built. They have a much heavier reliance in 2026 on brand new content. They are including more experimental sections directly into scored portions of the LSAT. There are fewer fully intact, fully reused sections. There is less visible continuity between LSAT administrations, and we're seeing random curveballs like, for example, the change to reading comprehension that happened on the January LSAT, where some people had full reading comp sections that did not contain any comparative or dual passage. Excuse me. And so, crystal balls or predictions only work when LSAT test reuse is stable and visible, and LSAC intentionally removed both the stability and the visibility of that reuse. And so you cannot predict what is designed not to be predictable. LSAC is engaging in structural randomization to remove the predictability of the LSAT. So for example, in reading comprehension without any forewarning, without any advance notice, LSAC changed reading comp for the first time in almost 20 years. Now going forward, some test takers receive a comparative or dual passage and others do not, even for the same administration, even on the same day. And that single change destroys one of the oldest assumptions in LSAT prep, that the structure of the LSAT is both fixed and knowable in advance. And so if your prediction, if your crystal ball is assuming that comparative passages will always be there, it's already wrong. LSAC has shown they are comfortable trading uniformity of the exam in favor of security of the exam. And predictions depend on three different assumptions. First, that tests are reused in recognizable ways. Second, that structure is consistent across test takers. And third, that historical frequency predicts future appearance. Now, all three of those assumptions are now unstable. Once LSAC limits test reuse, they hide the signals of that reuse and they mix things up. They introduce structural randomness intentionally. Forecasting becomes impossible. It becomes random guessing wrapped in confident but irrationally so. And so language. And so Predictions are not just inaccurate, they're also misleading. And despite all of this, the tendency to think you can peer into a crystal ball and predict the LSAT is, of course, tempting because it promises relief. It says, you don't need to master everything, just study what's coming. And that feels efficient, but it's unreasonable to do so because LSAC is able to uniformly, of their own accord, change things up without any prior warning. And of course, if you make 10 different predictions, maybe 5 of them are going to hit. Doesn't mean you're good at predicting, means you got lucky. If you make enough predictions, you can highlight the valid ones that turned out to be right, and you can sweep the invalid ones or wrong ones under the rug. So a valid prediction does not validate the method. We have to consider to what extent are you selecting for your wins and masking the failures. In other words, there is confirmation bias. So the question isn't, do predictions ever work? The real question is, do the predictions reliably improve the performance of test takers under uncertain conditions? And unfortunately, the answer is no. Nobody predicted that LSAC would stop including comparative dual passages for some test takers. Nobody could have known that in advance. Nobody could have predicted, for example, that LSAC would fail to announce that in advance, and so some folks were just thrown for a loop. And so reading comprehension is not testing only topical knowledge. It's testing whether you can read precisely, whether you can track viewpoints, whether you can predict the structure of the passage in advance. None of that is known in advance. You got to be able to evaluate the passage in the moment. My point here is that even if your crystal ball predictions guessed the topic of a passage in advance, it's not going to help if you don't have the skills to interpret the passage in the moment when you read it. And so once reading comp structure itself varies by test taker, predictions collapse completely. Reading comprehension is forcing you to deal with what's there in the moment, not merely what you expected. Now, of course, logical reasoning predictions are something that people often try to engage in as well, like there are going to be more flawed questions, more strengthened questions, more abstract reasoning, and those labels describe half the section. So again, they're meaningless predictions. You've got to think about what is the argument actually saying, what supports it, where's the gap, and why does this answer fail exactly? Predictions train categorization, but the LSAT rewards your reasoning abilities. And predictions can often backfire because when you're chasing predictions, you skip sections that seem irrelevant, you delay your practice waiting for better material, you over-drill narrow categories that are underrepresented on the actual LSAT, and you feel prepared, but you're not able to adapt. And so all of this creates brittle confidence that will collapse the moment the test deviates from those predictions, which now it does regularly more often than ever before. The test doesn't care what your predictions said. The clock doesn't care. The questions don't care. What matters is the student who walks in calm until the section doesn't match your expectations. And so now they're not solving questions. They are negotiating with reality. If you've trained the skills, you're going to be able to stabilize. But if you focus on predictions and on crystal balls, you're going to spiral. Now, most students actually retake the LSAT, which means even if predictions helped you once in the past, they're going to collapse over time. If your prep only works when the test behaves predictably, it's just gambling. And so what can we do going forward, given that the LSAT is less predictable than ever before? We've got to focus on the skills, which means you're going to do real sections from previously administered LSATs consistently. You're going to review deeply using a method like the Socratic review method. You're going to track your personal recurring errors, and you will train your ability to adapt deliberately. And so if your prep is working, you should be able to explain why a wrong answer is wrong. You should be able to adapt when something unexpected appears. You should be able to recover midsection after you've been thrown off. If not, there's a problem with your fundamentals. And of course, the LSAT has not become more difficult in a significant way in the next year, but it has become harder to predict on purpose. LSAC has, by necessity, had to respond to real threats like the organized cheating networks, the leaked exams, the pattern exploitation, by breaking the conditions that ever allowed crystal ball prep to exist in the first place. That era is over. And it could actually be good news for you if you're training the right way, because the LSAT you're taking doesn't care what you predicted, it cares about what you can do with what's in front of you on the screen, and that is something you can train. And if you'd like my help training for the LSAT, building up your ability to adapt no matter what LSAT throws your way, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons to everybody watching this now or later. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, and in my bio on TikTok as well. Open offer to everybody watching this now or later. And for those of you just joining, I run these lives every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you might happen to be watching this. I see a lot of questions in the chat. I will get to as many of those as I can. Feel free to keep those questions coming. Let's see here. Eli's asking, advice for a Yale junior with a 3.7 GPA. And so I guess part of my advice depends on where you're currently scoring, what your goal LSAT score is, when you might be planning on taking the LSAT, where you want to go to law school. All of that context can help me to give you better advice for everybody watching this. Try to include as much context as you can. In the absence of that, a 3.7 GPA is pretty good, broadly speaking, but if you want to go to Yale Law School, it's actually below their median. Yale Law, as well as all of the T14 law schools, have GPA medians of 3.9 or higher. Their LSAT medians are all 170 to 174, and so a 3.7 GPA puts you below their GPA median, so ideally, you're going to want to be above on the LSAT median to compensate. So I'd recommend aiming for a 175 or a 177 if you do want to go to Yale Law School or similar. And the fact that you're a junior is great. It means that you're planning ahead. You've got plenty of time. I see that you're saying you got a 155 LSAT score cold, no practice. That's awesome. You could definitely get to 170, 175 if you're willing to put in the time. And so you might want to aim to take the LSAT in April or June for your first take. Aim for June or August as your second take. Then you can apply in the fall when you're a senior in college, and then go directly from undergrad to law school if that's the path you want to take. I see that Brooke Bratt is aiming for Stanford. Awesome, that's great. Similar goals, of course, you want to have a high GPA, high LSAT score, since that is a top 3 law school, but you can get there with the right prep. Again, if you want to talk through your situation, feel free to book that free tutoring with me. Links in my bio. I see that, let's see other questions. Sarah's asking, does working at a law firm before law school help in applications, or are GPA and LSATs more important? So GPA and LSAT are the 2 biggest factors in the law school admissions. Working at a law firm is a nice to have, but not absolutely necessary. I'd rather you have higher numbers and not have the work experience than lower numbers with the work experience. And if you are a non-traditional law applicant, Queen of Diamonds is asking, is that such a thing? It is, certainly. So when people say a non-traditional law student, what do they mean? They mean that you're older than the typical applicant applying. And so typically you have your KJDs going directly from undergrad into law school with no gaps. Those are typically folks in their early 20s. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond, you might consider yourself a non-traditional applicant, but law schools don't mind how old you are. They love to see the work experience, and it's better to apply a bit later in life if that's the position that you're in with more work experience. That can also diminish the role of your undergrad GPA if it wasn't what you would have liked it to be. The longer you've been out of school, the more they're going to discount your undergraduate GPA, because who you were at 22 is not who you are at 42 or beyond, and they're going to place more importance on your LSAT score. And so if you're a non-traditional applicant, totally fine. Just aim for the highest LSAT score possible, since that will have more importance than it would for the typical applicant. Good question, but don't stress about it. It's totally fine to be older. Law schools are not going to penalize you for being older. Maddie's asking, how do you go about scholarship negotiations? So the best way to be in the strongest position for negotiations is to have strong numbers. If your LSAT score and your GPA are above the medians of the schools to which you're applying, you are in a stronger negotiating position because you are a more attractive applicant. So, in other words, get the numbers to support the contention that law schools should be willing to give you scholarship money to attract you to their school in particular. If your numbers are subpar, if they're below medians, schools don't have a reason to give you scholarship money because you're going to hurt them in the rankings rather than help them. If your numbers are high, then you're in a good position. Now, what you want to do additionally is to have multiple offers in hand, meaning that you have applied to a wide range of different schools, that you've got multiple offers of acceptance, multiple scholarship offers, and then you can play the schools off each other. You could say to school A, I'd love to go to your school, but school B offered me more money and finances are real. If you could match or exceed their offer, I would go to your school instead. That will give them reason to potentially up their offer if they want to attract you to attend their school in particular. You can do all of this over email if you'd like, and it's expected to negotiate, so don't be shy about it. Law schools do these negotiations every single day. You might be new to it, of course, but you're leaving money on the table if you don't do it. So feel free to engage in some back and forth. Keep it over email if you want to carefully edit what you're going to say. But having offers in hand from alternative options is going to strengthen your position significantly, because in negotiations, the question's always, what's your best alternative? If you have other schools that have offered you money, you could always walk away from a given school. If you've only gotten into one school and only applied to one school, you don't really have good alternatives except for not going to law school at all. But if you've done all this work with the LSAT, with applications, you may be inclined to take the offer, even if it's not a great one, but you can strengthen your position just by applying to more schools. And getting merit aid is more important than ever before because of the elimination of the Grad Plus loans starting in July, meaning there's going to be a cap on how much you can borrow from the federal government. And you don't want to go the private loan route because interest rates are through the roof. And so better to get discounts on your tuition in the form of merit aid. Blessing's asking, is it possible to get a full ride to law school, meaning that you're paying zero in tuition? Good news is it absolutely is possible. You can get all sorts of scholarships on tuition. You can get 10% off, 20% off, half off, a full ride, meaning 100% off. You could even get a living stipend on top of getting a full ride, meaning that you could actually get paid to go to law school. Now, getting such a good offer requires getting really high numbers, of course. And so if your GPA is below median, you want to have a higher LSAT score to compensate. The higher your LSAT score is, the higher your GPA is, the more likely you are to get that full ride. It just comes down to having strong numbers, having a strong application. Now, if you want to Google for other scholarships outside of merit aid from schools directly, you can, of course, look those up, but there aren't that many of them. Most scholarships for law school come down to just getting discounts on tuition from the school itself. Silver Hoops is asking, I'm planning to take the LSAT in the summer. Where should I start? And so if we're talking about June, for example, that's the latest LSAT test date currently published. They'll probably offer it in August, but they haven't released the specific dates yet. And so talking about a 5-month time frame, it's a pretty good amount of time to study for the LSAT and take it. Over the course of 5 months, I'd recommend first building a strong foundation in the different sections, the different question types, maybe drilling some questions by type to better understand the proper perspective from which to view each section and each question type. Then you have doing individual sections to work on your pacing and time management, full-length exams to build up your endurance, and of course, engaging in deep introspective review throughout the process. All of this bundled together in the LASER approach. LASER is an acronym standing for Learning, Accuracy, Sections, Exams, and Review, and that approach is the cornerstone of my courses and my coaching programs. In every coaching program that we offer, we create for you a custom study plan, laying out exactly what to do every single day from now till the test. And if you want to talk through tutoring options or comprehensive support options, I see user 0522 is asking about that. You can feel free to book a free LSAT tutoring lesson with me. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video, pinned in the chat, in my bio on TikTok and Instagram as well. Happy to meet with you personally and talk through a plan of attack. And so if you were to take that LASER approach over a 5-month time frame, you might spend month 1 on L for learning, building a strong foundation in the different sections, different question types. A for accuracy in the second month, drilling questions by type. Then you have S for sections, doing full-length timed sections, 35 minutes to work on pacing and time management. You could do that in month 3. Then months 4 and 5, you're working on E for exams and endurance, and of course, engaging in review throughout. For review, we use a framework called the Socratic review method. The way it works is we look at exactly what your misunderstanding stemmed from, where it came from. Was it a misunderstanding in the argument, the question stem, or the choices? If it was in the argument, was it LSAC's failure to include a key indicator word for evidence and conclusion or sufficient and necessary conditions? Did they bury the conclusion in the middle of the argument? Did they use annoying words like unless, except, until, and without? If your mistake was in the question stem, was it LSAC using unfamiliar wording to refer to a common question type and you didn't recognize it? Or was your mistake in the answer choices? Was it a tempting wrong answer? Was it an unappealing right answer? If it was a tempting wrong answer, what made the wrong answer tempting and what ultimately made it wrong? If it was an unappealing right answer, what made the right answer unappealing and what ultimately makes it correct? If you can drill down to the root cause of what you're getting wrong and why, then you can avoid making the same mistake again. And one thing we do in the coaching programs is we help you make sure that you are going deep enough on the review process to make sure that you are not leaving any understanding on the table, making sure that you are fully extracting every possible insight from your review so that you will in fact avoid making the same mistake again. Because the LSAT is a test of pattern recognition, meaning if you can spot the tricks and traps, you can avoid them. It all comes down to understanding how the test makers think. And that applies whenever you're taking the LSAT. If you're taking it in June or August or beyond, you've got plenty of time to improve significantly and work through all 5 phases of the LASER approach. Again, LASER standing for learning, accuracy, sections, exams, and review. In contrast, if you have only 1 month, say for the February LSAT, you're going to want to focus more on taking full exams and reviewing them in depth, maybe drilling weak areas here and there on the side. But at this point, hopefully you've got the majority of your fundamentals down. Now, the February LSAT is not too late to apply for this cycle. Totally fine, because law schools are not evaluated based on when you applied. They're only evaluated based on your numbers. In other words, law schools report to the American Bar Association what your LSAT score was and what your GPA was. They don't report when you apply to law school. And so for that reason, there's not really any incentive for law schools to care when you applied, because it's your LSAT score and GPA that are pulled by US News for inclusion in the ever important US News Law School rankings. And so it's your LSAT and GPA that matter the most. The soft factors like application essays, your personal statement, your application essays, your addenda, your resume, your letters of rec, all of those pale in importance to the quantified metrics. So the soft factors can all help provide more context. They can help tell the story of who you are, but they're not weighed to the same extent. And all of them work in concert. They all work together to tell the story in a way that the numbers cannot. And so if you want to get the law school admissions officers to like you, to feel a personal connection with you, to relate to you, to want to advocate for you beyond your numbers, the soft factors are how you do that. But it's not as if one essay matters more than another, or your resume matters more than your letters of rec or your interviews. All of them work together. Now, if you have great people skills, if you have good social skills, if you're good at interviewing, then of course, pursue the interviews. Most law schools do not offer interviews. Some of them do. And so if they do offer them, of course, take advantage of them. If they don't, you can still reach out to them for an informational interview saying, I would love to go to your school. I have some questions that weren't answered on the website. Can we book a quick phone call or quick Zoom call to talk through them? They will almost always say yes if you give them sufficient notice, because they are, of course, marketing their school. And during that call, you ask some nuanced, detailed questions. You build a bit of familiarity with them, and that can help and provide some more color to your application. Nelson's asking, would it be beneficial to lie about your race? Ooh, that's a good one. That's a tough one. No, do not lie about your race. Don't lie in general, of course. Besides the fact that the Supreme Court has banned race-based affirmative action, if you lie on your application, that could come back to bite you later when you go before the bar. And there have been cases, I can think of a handful of politicians over the years who've lied about their race in various contexts, and that has gotten called out. I'm not going to name any specifics here, but you could think of your own examples. The idea being that what you put on an official form of any kind can hurt you later in the future, and you never know what you want to do with your career down the line. Your desires and goals could evolve and change. And when you go before the bar, they're going to ask you some tough questions sometimes. And so if you wrote down something that was patently false, and it's very easy for them to tell that it's false, that could pose a problem for you being admitted to the bar. And you wouldn't want to go through 3 years of law school and the opportunity cost and the tuition cost not to ever become an attorney. And something like your race is probably pretty easy for someone to prove or disprove. And so not a good idea in general, certainly not good in this case. Don't do it. So I'd say avoid lying. Think about what can you do to actually improve your admissions odds that would be in integrity. So when I think about ways to improve admissions, stronger LSAT score, stronger GPA, stronger essays, more demonstrated interest in the school. And of course, your undergrad GPA is already pretty fixed at this point, most likely. And so you may not be able to move that significantly if you're already later in college or already graduated, but your LSAT score, that's the number one factor you can improve. That's going to have a large impact on your admissions chances. Your application essays, you can keep polishing those, refining those, editing those, getting feedback from others, of course. You can reach out to the school for an informational interview. You can polish your resume. All of that can boost your odds. And so rather than going the dishonest route, there are plenty of honest things you can do to improve your chances. And if you want to talk LSAT, of course, I'm happy to help and serve as a resource and a source of support for you. I'm offering free LSAT tutoring to everybody watching this. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. Link is below the video, pinned in the chat, in my bio. Happy to talk through your situation with you personally, help you craft a plan of attack to improve your LSAT score. Nick is asking, how should we demonstrate interest in our top law schools? Great question. So you can reach out to them for that informational interview, like I talked about earlier. You can tour the school. You can write a why X essay, like why our school in particular. They often ask why you want to go to their school. And so you do some in-depth research on the school, mention some specifics about that particular school that's unique to them, showing you've done the homework, done the research. Definitely tour it if you can. Attend any online marketing webinars they're offering. All of that can certainly help. Then if you have any tie to the region or tie to the school specifically, highlight that as well. So if you live in the area, mention that, of course. If you have family in the area, mention that. If you have any alums in your family who went there, mention that also. How was asking, do spring admissions put you at a disadvantage? Are you talking about applying in the spring? I mean, it's a bit later in the cycle. That could hurt a little bit. I mean, the earlier you apply, the better, of course, all else being equal. If you need more time to get the highest LSAT score possible, it might be worth waiting a little bit to get that higher score. But applying in April or June is a bit later than a lot of the deadlines. And so you want to always check the particular school to see if they're still accepting applications and if they'll still take the results. In many cases, they will be flexible on those deadlines and take applications even past the published deadline. But if you want to start law school in the spring instead of the fall, different story, of course. Those are more unique situations. I'm not saying that it's going to hurt you, but those are particular programs. I would contact the school for specifics because those vary from school to school. Catherine's asking, how do you help with building confidence when taking and studying for the LSAT? So I think your confidence improves when you've demonstrated to yourself that you have what it takes to achieve your goal score. And so building a strong foundation in the different sections, the different question types, having you take several full-length practice tests shows you that test day itself will be like just another run-through, and nothing is likely to throw you for a curveball or throw you off because you've done it all before. If you've seen every section, if you've seen every question type, if you have demonstrated for yourself proficiency in the logic of the test, then whatever method of reasoning, whatever question type they're going to throw your way, you already know how to handle it. And so imagine if you're aiming for a goal score, say, of 170, you've taken a dozen practice tests and your average was a 173, then you could reasonably feel confident going into your test that you are likely to score 170 or above because you've done it so many times in the past. And so one thing we do for our students is that we build them custom study plans, laying out exactly what to do every single day from their start date all the way through till their test date, progressively building the skills in every section, every question type, every method of reasoning, every one of the 17 different types of logical reasoning questions, covering reading comprehension as well, working on pacing and time management and endurance. If you've done that all before, then nothing on test day will surprise you, or even if there is something new, even if there is a curveball, because LSAC is always changing things up, like they did this past January, for example, then you'll still be able to adapt and be flexible despite the surface level differences on the test. So if you want to talk through that, of course, feel free to book the free tutoring with me. Link in my bio. We could talk through your particulars. Tarek is mentioning about logic games being taken off the exam. So logic games were actually taken off the exam back in June 2024. It's already been over a year and a half since the change. For those who are not aware, LSAC removed the logic game section and replaced it with a second scored logical reasoning section. And so if you're using old prep textbooks or old PDFs, they may not reflect the modern LSAT. So I would discontinue using anything outdated, only use materials from 2025 and beyond, because they are more likely to reflect the modern version of the LSAT. And of course, digital courses like mine are more easily updated than a print textbook that may reflect a version of the test that no longer exists. And there's nothing worse than wasting your time because you wanted to save money on a $30 textbook. So use modern materials. Logic games is off the test for a long time now. Logical reasoning is now 2/3 of the test, so you want to focus more on that, because any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning are going to be doubled across the two sections of the test on LR. And of course, at LSAT Unplugged, we offer a wide variety of ways to self-study and study with support as well. For more personalized support, we offer private one-on-one coaching. We also offer small group sessions via Zoom. We also offer on-demand courses for more self-study and custom study plans as well, again, for more self-study, laying out exactly what to do between your private one-on-one coaching if you're looking for that kind of support. Tarek is mentioning that apparently poli-sci majors don't do too great on the LSAT. Yeah, it's kind of odd, but actually those who do best on the LSAT tend to have majored in either philosophy or computer science. Not sure why. It could be that either studying comp sci and philosophy helps you build your logic skills, or it could be that the types of people who tend to major in philosophy and comp sci are also predisposed already to do better on the LSAT. Could, of course, be a combination of both of those factors. Impossible to say. I'm not going to necessarily recommend that you major in any subject in particular for the sole purpose of getting into law school or doing better on the LSAT. In fact, because law school admission is primarily numbers driven, I might actually recommend majoring in something where you're likely to do well to help you maintain a high GPA, and then devote your efforts to studying for the LSAT in particular. In other words, don't study formal logic in the hopes that it'll help you with the LSAT, because a lot of what you learn in formal logic goes way beyond the LSAT, and it may also even complicate things or confuse you a little bit, because traditional formal logic notation is not designed for the time constraints of the LSAT. There are more concise ways to represent particular concepts symbolically, and most of the LSAT is actually informal logic. Yoselin's asking about information on LSAT registration. And so currently the upcoming LSATs are February, April, and June. The registration deadline for the February LSAT has already passed, so it's too late to sign up for that one. You've also got the April LSAT, though, roughly 3 months away. You've got the June LSAT, roughly 5 months away. Those are the last two LSATs for the current testing cycle, which ends in June. Then starting in July, we have the next testing cycle. They run from July to June of the following year. Last year, the LSAT was offered August, September, October, and November. They'll probably offer it similar months or the same months going forward. They'll probably release those dates in the next few months or so. So when they do, you'll then be able to register for it, but don't worry about that, because anytime you register for it before the deadline is totally fine. Scheduling specific days and times only is allowed a couple weeks prior to the actual LSAT administration. Scanning through here for more questions. Hal was asking if we offer admissions consulting or just LSAT prep. So at LSAT Unplugged, we offer help with both LSAT and admissions. We typically recommend, though, focusing on the LSAT to start with because it is the biggest factor. It's the biggest needle mover in admissions. Like I said earlier, the soft factors matter a lot less. And so for that reason, we typically want you to lock in your goal score on the LSAT before working on anything application essay related. So get to your goal score, take the LSAT, and then if you want help with your essays, we could talk through all of that. Eli's saying, Belmont told me they have 80% more applicants this cycle. Medians are skyrocketing, in my opinion. Yeah, so law school applicant numbers are way up over the past 2 years. In aggregate, they're up roughly 50% over the past 2 years. And medians are also skyrocketing as well because there's a lot of GPA inflation and a lot of LSAT score inflation as well. It's becoming easier and easier to get high GPAs in undergrad. And so law schools will often discount the importance of the GPA for that reason, because your undergrad GPA, especially if you majored in the humanities, is not necessarily a good indication of your true academic ability. And so they place more importance on your LSAT score for that reason. The problem is that there's also a lot of LSAT score inflation as well, leading to rising LSAT medians. And if you're wondering why LSAT scores are rising, it's a number of different factors. We've got the LSAT being offered more frequently than it used to be. It's gone from being offered 4 times a year to 8 times a year, so it's easier to retake. And the highest score is the only one that matters. And so it incentivizes students to keep retaking the LSAT to get a higher score. We also have the rise of LSAT accommodations. It's easier than ever before to get extra time, extra breaks. And when I'm saying extra time, I don't just mean time and a half. I mean, you could get double time or even triple time. You could get unlimited stop-start breaks. And so given that the LSAT is so strictly timed, with your standard timing of 35 minutes, imagine getting 70 minutes or 105 minutes per section, or being able to take the LSAT over the course of 2 days. That makes it a whole lot easier to get a higher score, of course. And whether you got accommodations is not noted on your record. And so, again, no downside to getting the accommodations. Additionally, with the removal of the logic games section, it's easier to study because there's less material to study. Rather than dividing your time across 3 different sections, games, reasoning, and reading comp, it's now only 2 sections, logical reasoning and reading comp. So you can narrow your focus, less material for you to study, easier to get a higher score. And that's been the case, of course, for a year and a half now, that there are no more logic games. And so whenever you're taking it, especially if you're taking it in April or June, you could sufficiently prepare in only 3 to 5 months, given that you're only working on logical reasoning and reading comp. Because the question is, how much time does it take to build a strong foundation? It takes less time if you're not studying games anymore. So just logical reasoning and reading comp only, we can work on the foundation faster, get through it faster, and then switch gears to more timed work, which is really the name of the game, because it's not enough to get the questions right. You got to get them right under test day conditions, considering pacing, time management, and endurance. And so a lot of students will focus on the drilling a lot because a lot of the apps facilitate that. But we also want to make sure that you're working on pacing, time management, endurance to build up your stamina for test day itself. A lot of students' scores will drop 5 to 8 points from the practice to the actual, oftentimes due to a failure to properly simulate test day conditions. And so we help you avoid that by having you do your practice tests on LSAC's Law Hub platform, and by having you take a dozen or more practice tests before the big day, so that test day itself is like just another run through and you've done it all before. Sarah's asking, where can I get the most recent official practice tests? The best place is LSAC's Law Hub platform. You get 4 exams for free on there, and you get the others with a Law Hub Advantage subscription of $120 per year. Well worth the investment, considering the importance of the LSAT in the law school admissions process. So get the practice tests there, study them there. Don't use textbooks or practice books, because the LSAT is online now. It's not on paper. And so that's another reason why student scores drop, is because they were studying on paper and the LSAT was online. So I always recommend practicing like it's going to be on game day. Harkenbark is asking, thoughts on in-person versus at-home testing. They each have their pros and cons. When you take it at home, you have the comfort factor of your own environment, but you also have the problem of remote proctors. And so remote proctors who are halfway around the world and themselves may have shaky internet connections can cause some significant problems during the test when you have them interrupting you in the middle of the test or dropping off midway through, and then another proctor joins and interrupts you again. It's not a great experience. When you take the LSAT in person, you don't have the at-home comfort factor, but you have the benefit of in-person proctoring where they are physically there, and so there's no connection issues for them to experience. And so if it were me, I would take it in person, but there's pros and cons. If you're taking it at home, you got to make sure that you have a good environment, though, with family, roommates, significant others not interrupting you during the test, and that you got to have a good internet connection as well. Pook Dinero is asking, what's the best way to study for the LSAT? The best way varies from person to person. There's benefits to each format. You can study out of textbooks, with video courses, with online courses, whether online or in courses that are online or in person. You could do a on-demand recorded course or a live course via Zoom, or you could do private one-on-one coaching. And so at LSAT Unplugged, we offer a combination of all of the above. So we do have a physical book. We also have on-demand courses. We have small group sessions via Zoom, and we have private one-on-one coaching. And I think that's honestly the killer combo, because then you're studying in a variety of different ways. You get the one-on-one personalization, but you also get the community factor with a small group and different perspectives from different coaches each night that we have the classes. Then you have on-demand courses for self-study asynchronous at whatever time is best for you. And so you got to think about, what kind of learner are you? What kind of support would help you? And is it more likely that you'll hit your goal with or without the support? I would think more support could only help if you could budget for it. And if you want to talk through options, of course, you can book that free LSAT tutoring with me at unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, and in my bio on TikTok as well. Happy to meet with you personally and talk through your situation. And by the way, folks, if you find these lives helpful, I do these every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific, here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you happen to be watching this. If you find this helpful, please spread the word, share it to your socials. The only way this grows is through word of mouth. I don't do any advertising for these, and the algorithm doesn't boost them because they can't run ads during them. And so it really does mean the world to me if you could spread the word, share it with others in Discord, Reddit, Facebook groups, group chats, wherever you're studying with others. I do appreciate it. Sarah's asking, is it helpful to read the official LSAC disclosed tests? Someone on Reddit suggested it, and I don't want to do anything morally iffy. So if LSAC has disclosed the tests themselves, which they have, there is no moral issue with using them. In fact, the whole reason that LSAC released them is to help students study better. And so if you're talking about the practice tests on LSAC's Law Hub platform, they're made available for you to benefit from by studying out of them. And so definitely feel free to use them. If you're talking about the leaked exams from the organized cheating rings in China, then no, of course, you should not be using those, and I would avoid it at all costs. But for the officially released ones, totally fine. And Danny, to your question, the best LSAT platform is LSAC's Law Hub Advantage in terms of official prep. And then, of course, at LSAT Unplugged, we have our own platform as well. And it's fully available for you to benefit from if you'd like, and we could talk through that as well, of course. Life of Nikki is saying that she took the LSAT remotely in January, and it was rough with the proctors not being able to see the room well. So that's another thing as well. When you're taking the LSAT remotely, they have you do this scan of your room with your webcam, and it could be a bit frustrating sometimes, and that could be a bit of an issue with them interrupting you over that. And so another reason to take it in person, if you can, to avoid that sort of issue. And she's asking what score I got. So I personally scored a 175. Took me an entire year, though. I started off at a 152, and at least half of my prep was a total waste of time. If I'd done it properly, I could have knocked it out in just a couple of months, because ultimately the LSAT to test of pattern recognition. And so one thing I aim to do with my coaching now is help students study more efficiently to avoid the mistakes I made back when I was personally studying. Just scanning through here for more questions coming in. Diego's asking, is it true I can take the LSAT with my engineering degree? Yes, you can major in literally anything and go to law school. Doesn't matter what. You can major in STEM, you can major in humanities, you can apply to law school while you're still an undergrad, you can apply after you've graduated. Does not matter at all. You can major in literally anything and go to law school. There's no prerequisite for it. You don't have to be pre-law in particular. And it's even questionable whether being pre-law helps you with LSAT prep or law school admissions. Law schools don't really care what you majored in, and in fact, it could benefit you to be a STEM major because it's more unique. So they have plenty of poli-sci majors applying to law school, and so having an engineering degree is more unique, and that could help them see you as being more employable upon graduation, especially if you want to practice, say, patent law, for example. You've got some credentials to back it up. Du is asking, should I intern at a law firm before going to law school? Yeah, you certainly could if you feel like you're not sure whether law school is right for you. You want to get some real world exposure to the practice of law, then interning there would be a good thing to do. In contrast, if you're totally certain law school is what you want to pursue, then you might want to just save that time and study for the LSAT to strengthen your application that way. Of course, time is always limited, so you want to think about what's the number one thing you could be doing to improve your odds. Destin's asking, what should I be doing as a freshman undergrad? I would say enjoy college and maintain a high GPA. You don't need to start studying for the LSAT as a freshman. It might actually be premature, and you might be better off just maintaining a high GPA and investigating whether law school is what you truly want to do. Then as a sophomore or a junior, that's when you start actually studying for the LSAT. You don't need several years to study for the LSAT. Just 1 year is more time than enough. And so maybe you come back to us as a sophomore, study for it between sophomore and junior year, take it as a junior, and then you can still apply to law school directly from undergrad. LSAT scores are good for 5 years, by the way. And so taking it as a junior or a sophomore even is still not too early. DJ's saying, my undergrad journey's been rocky and a lot of retake classes on my transcript. Well, retaking is good because it can certainly help you boost your GPA a bit. If your undergrad's been rocky, you could also write a GPA addendum explaining what caused your GPA to be lower than it otherwise would have been. And if you can show an upward trend, especially through retaking classes, that will do a lot to help your application and answer those concerns that law schools might have. Of course, the other thing you could do is take the LSAT, get a higher score on the LSAT to boost your odds as well. The LSAT is actually the biggest factor in the law school admissions process. And so the GPA is a close second, of course, but LSAT's number one. So I'd say show the upward trend on your GPA, write that low GPA addendum, and then work on your LSAT as well. And to Angie's question, yes, we do help with those sorts of addendums as well. We always want to focus on helping you get the highest LSAT score possible first. But after that's done, we can help with all the application essays. Feel free to reach out and we could talk through that. RJT is asking, I'm contemplating law school, but I'm wondering if 40 is too old for law school. No, definitely not too old. Law schools love older applicants. They have more life experience, more real world exposure to the law on average, and you will not be at a disadvantage in any way. Highlight your work experience, show your resume, show what you've done, but not too late at all. And there are folks who are way older than you who have applied to law school and gotten in as well. So totally fine, not anything to be concerned about as an older applicant. You're totally good on that. Talk Today 12 is asking, do they have a Russian version of the LSAT? Because I can't do English so good. Unfortunately, there is no Russian version of the LSAT, and law schools want to see that you could do an English language exam because law school is going to be in English also, right? So the question is, if you can't do well on the English LSAT, are you going to be able to do well on the English law school, if you're going to law school in the US or North America in general? So maybe You might need a longer time frame to master the LSAT, but you got to do what you got to do. Interestingly, there is a Spanish language version of the LSAT, but I think that's only for going to law school in Puerto Rico, where law school is going to be in Spanish. And so typically, you're taking the LSAT in the language in which you're also going to do law school and take the bar exam. So if you need more time to prep for the LSAT, take that time. We have a lot of experience working with non-native English speakers on their LSAT prep. Takes a bit longer, more work on vocabulary, of course, but you can conquer the LSAT just the same. Your reasoning ability is there. It's just the translation we got to work on. And so getting the exposure to the language is what it's all about. Marianne's asking, why is Yale Law insanely hard to get into, like harder to get into than Harvard or Stanford Law? Well, I think that any law school is hard to get into as a function of demand relative to supply, right? So if a law school is very small and there are many people who want to go there, they've got limited seats available to them. And so I think that Yale Law's admission rate is something like roughly 6%, maybe 5 or 4% admissions. And so most people get denied. It's a function of them having a lot of demand and having very few seats available. And so the more they can increase demand, the lower an acceptance rate they're going to have. And Yale Law has been #1 in the US News rankings, I think, for roughly 30, 35 years straight. And so it could be a function of them just being #1 ranked. That means everyone's looking to go to the single best law school. That could be driving more application volume. But it's also worth knowing that Harvard and Yale both do not offer any merit scholarships, meaning they're not offering financial aid on the basis of merit. And so even if you have a crazy high LSAT, crazy high GPA, even if you had a 180 LSAT and a 4.0 GPA, they're not going to give you any scholarship money. And that's a good reason not to go there. In contrast, a school like Columbia or Cornell or NYU, also top-ranked law schools, I think they're all in the top 6, they are still offering merit aid, even though they're also quite prestigious. And so you might want to go to a slightly lower-ranked school and get a lot of money off saved on your tuition in the form of discounts instead of going to Yale. But if you want to be on the Supreme Court one day, you want to work in big law, you want to be a Supreme Court clerk at least, then going to Harvard or Yale will help a great deal. But it's often better to go to a lower ranked school and get more scholarship money than a higher ranked school with less scholarship money. So don't just chase the prestige alone. That's not the only thing that matters. Michalina's, I'm not sure how to say your name, I apologize. Michalina's asking, I'm a really bad test taker. Is it fine to start studying for the LSAT my sophomore summer break? Yeah, totally fine to start studying. I'm not sure if you meant between sophomore and junior or between freshman and sophomore year, but either way, the answer is the same. You're starting early enough, even if you're a so-called bad test taker. Maybe that means you need more time, you need more exposure, need more practice, but having 6 months to a year to study for the LSAT is more than enough time to conquer and reach your full potential. If you're worried about it, just give yourself more of a head start. Your scores are good for 5 years, by the way. And so you could take it as a sophomore or a junior and still apply in the fall of senior year, or even take a gap year between undergrad and law school and still apply. Totally cool. And a lot of times being a so-called bad test taker just means you've never prepared properly for a multiple choice, strictly timed exam before. And so there are ways that you could study properly with the right exposure. And that's one thing that we help students with. We guide them through the process, using that laser approach, building a strong foundation, learning the different sections and different question types, then and only then transitioning into timed work. And so a lot of bad test taking comes down to not studying the right way, either taking a ton of tests without building the foundation first, or relentlessly drilling questions by type and never transitioning into full-length exams. So don't neglect the full exams, and also don't neglect building the foundation first. If you do both of those things, build foundation and take practice tests, you're going to be in much better shape come test day. And one thing we do for students is we help them craft a solid plan of attack, laying out exactly what to do from now till your test date, considering your current score, your goal score, your time frame, and the schools you want to go to. And so if you want to talk through your personal situation beyond what we can do on a live like this, I'm offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody out there watching this now or later. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, and in my bio on TikTok as well. Open offer to everybody watching this now or later. Scrumptious is asking about free resources. So the number one free resource is going to be LSAC's Law Hub platform. They give you 4 exams for free, 4 previously administered LSAT practice tests. Additionally, for free, I have the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel linked in my bio. For those of you watching this on TikTok, I cover every section, every question type on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. You can go there for free and work through all of it. I'm also offering free LSAT tutoring lessons for everybody watching this. Link in my bio for that as well. I also have the LSAT Unplugged podcast in addition to that, depending on how you like to learn. And so if you want to talk through situations, you want to plan your personal LSAT study regimen, happy to talk through your plan of attack for that. Hard is asking, I'm taking the LSAT in June and need a lot of prep. I'm sure a lot of folks out there are in the exact same position. 5 months is plenty of time to work through every section, every question type. I would recommend starting off with the most common question types to begin with. In logical reasoning, those are necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. Those are the 3 most common question types. I'd start there before working on the less common types like parallel, evaluate the argument, because they're less common. They're not nearly as important. And so if you were to take a cold diagnostic practice test, you might get a low score, and that might be discouraging, but I'd recommend using it only as a benchmark from which to measure your later progress. It is not a rendition or an indication of how you're going to do on test day. It just tells you what you already know. You have not yet learned the language of the LSAT, but you can over time. You've got 3 months till April, 5 months till June, 7 months till August, 9 months till October. Plenty of time for any of those LSAT test dates. And whenever you're taking it, we can craft a plan of attack to help you reach your goal on your time frame. If you're taking it in just 3 to 4 weeks, for those of you taking it in February, of course, we're going to have a more intensive boot camp style approach where you get live coaching 7 days a week. If you're taking it in April or June, we'll take a slightly more relaxed approach with maybe less frequent meetings, spread it out over a longer period of time. Because it is a marathon, of course, not a sprint. We don't want you to burn out. We'll have you take days off here and there, but it's doable. We've just got to look at your time frame and craft your goals around all of that. In terms of time frames, to Mark John's question, when to take the LSAT, when to apply if you're a junior in college. So if you're currently a junior in college and you want to go straight from undergrad into law school, I would recommend you aim to take the LSAT in April or June for your first take. Take it in June or August for your second take as a retake, as a backup. Whichever one of those paths you choose, you can still apply to law school. The second application's open in the fall when you're a senior, and then you can apply in fall of 26 to start law school in fall of 27 if you want to go direct from undergrad into law school. If you want to take a gap year or 2 in between, totally fine. Your LSAT score is good for 5 years before it expires, and so you might want to lock in the LSAT while you are still in an academic mindset, while you're still in school. Because once you get out of school and you're working, you start to get rusty on academics and things of that nature and multiple choice, and so it can be a bit harder to study the longer you've been out of school. You might want to knock it out while these things are still fresh for you. But even if you are out of school, of course, we can still get you up to speed. It just requires a bit more work in some cases. And of course, if you want to talk through your situation, if you have not yet booked that free LSAT tutoring with me, feel free. There are still slots available to meet with me personally, one-on-one via Zoom. The link is unpluggedprep.com/start. The link is below this video on YouTube, pinned in the chat on YouTube, in my bio on TikTok as well. And by the way, folks, if you find these lives helpful, I do them every single weekday, same time, same place, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 Central, 11 Pacific. here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you're watching this. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care. Thanks for joining.